I've always believed that family should be the one group of people you never have to second guess. I grew up thinking that no matter how life shifted, blood would be thicker than water. That was the line my mom used every time someone in the family did something awful, and we were all expected to just move on. But let me tell you something. Blood might be thicker, but I've come to learn that respect is what actually holds things together. And once that's gone, well, let's just say things unravel fast. My name's Grayson. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my adult life, I've worked in tech, freelancing, consulting, and building up a pretty decent savings cushion. I'm not flashy, but I'm solid. I don't take vacations every other month. I don't lease brand new cars to show off, and I definitely don't post rich guy quotes on Instagram. I've always tried to be the kind of person others can rely on, especially my family. I'm the oldest of three. My younger sister, Charlotte, just turned 30 this past summer. The milestone birthday, the one she had been talking about since she was 25. No exaggeration. She'd bring it up in group chats, family dinners, even random calls with me while I was in the middle of debugging some horrible back-end system at work. Gray, when I turn 30, it's going to be iconic. I don't want boring food or some sad little dinner at mom's. I want a rooftop. I want neon signs. I want a full-on experience. And every time, I'd just smile and say something like, well, you've got time to plan. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't really my thing. Here's the thing though. Charlotte is the baby of the family. And not in a cute, coddled way. More like golden child energy, turned up to 10. My parents, especially my mom, have always put her on this pedestal like she's this fragile little gemstone we all have to protect. Growing up, if Charlotte forgot to do her chores, it was because she's artistic. If I forgot, I was lazy. When she got a B-, it was because school just doesn't appreciate creativity. If I got an A-, it was what happened to the plus. She's always had a flair for the dramatic, lavish birthday parties, emotional main character speeches, new hobbies every 3 months, and relationships that turned into Instagram reels and breakup rants overnight. But despite all that, I never really held it against her. Because I figured, hey, people change, right? Spoiler alert, some people don't. Earlier this year, Charlotte called me out of the blue one night. I had just finished a long day of consulting and was eating cold pad thai in front of my laptop when she FaceTimed me. No, hey, how are you? Just straight into, I need your help. Turns out, she had found the perfect venue for her 30th. Rooftop, skyline view, cocktail bar, custom lighting. But she was short on the deposit. And it wasn't a small amount, either. For $1,000 upfront, with the full payment landing somewhere around $9,800 total. I remember blinking at the number and saying something like, that's more than some weddings, Charlotte. She laughed. I know, but like, it's my 30th. It only happens once, and this is my year. You know how rough last year was. I just want this to be perfect. For context, last year's rough patch was that she broke up with her boyfriend of 3 months and didn't get the influencer deal she wanted with some activewear brand. Meanwhile, I was quietly pulling 80-hour weeks trying to land long-term clients and managing back-end nightmares without a team. Still, I felt for her. I always have. Even when she's exhausting. Even when she's self-absorbed. Even when she forgets to say thank you. And I told myself, what's 10 grand if it makes her happy? So I sent her $10,000. No strings attached. No, you'll pay me back later deal. I figured, family, right? A week later, she texted me a massive thank you message, filled with heart emojis, dramatic gifs, and you're the best big brother ever. I even got a phone call from our mom saying how sweet and generous I was, and that I always show up when it counts. I won't lie, that felt nice. But here's where things start to get strange. The invites rolled out a few months later. They weren't printed or emailed. She made this whole Instagram-style announcement on her stories with a glitter filter and a 2000s remix in the background. It was a VIP-only kind of vibe. Just her closest friends, a few cousins, and apparently a few influencers she'd been DMing. And when I watched it, I realized something. I wasn't mentioned. At all. I figured maybe it was just for flair. I mean, I was the one who funded the thing. Surely I'd be invited, right? I waited a couple of days. Then a week. No text. No call. Nothing in the mail. Not even a casual "you coming, right?" So I texted her. Hey, just checking. Am I missing something, or was the invite lost in the mail? She replied 2 hours later with a laughing emoji. Then, OMG Gray, I meant to tell you. I was thinking about the vibe of the party, and it's kind of this like sexy, modern, young crowd. I just didn't want you to feel out of place or bored lol. I figured we could do a dinner sometime instead. Just us. I stared at the screen. Then I stared at it again. I read it maybe 4 more times before I realized. She wasn't joking. She really didn't invite me to a party I paid for because I didn't fit the vibe. I didn't respond right away. In fact, I didn't respond at all that night. I just sat there, in this weird combination of disbelief and anger. I wasn't expecting a parade, but I wasn't expecting to be completely left out like some unwanted cousin, either. The next few days were a blur of texts flying around the family group chat, photos of decorations being set up, her dress fittings, questions about the cake. My name didn't come up once, not even from my parents. I kept waiting for someone, anyone, to ask why I wasn't on the guest list. No one did. That was the moment something shifted in me. I'd always chalked up the favoritism to the usual family dynamics. But this was blatant. And I'd had enough. I didn't lash out. I didn't confront her. I didn't send an angry voice note or demand my money back. I just started quietly looking into things. Things I had the power to do. Things I had signed my name on. And then, about a week before the big night, I made a few phone calls. The day of her party, just 1 hour before guests were supposed to arrive, the venue manager called her personally. Not me. Her. And that's when everything began to unravel. I wish I could say that call from the venue was my plan all along. That I had some Machiavellian scheme laid out from the second she told me I didn't fit the vibe. But the truth is, it took me a while to reach that point. Because at first, I was just hurt. Not furious. Not scheming. Just sitting there in my apartment with the blinds half closed and my inbox full of unread client emails, trying to process how my little sister, who I'd covered for, paid for, defended, and always looked out for, had managed to slice me out of her big moment without blinking. I kept replaying her text over and over. That LOL at the end. That smug, casual tone like I was some weird uncle who might embarrass her in front of her influencer friends. And the worst part? No one said anything. My parents knew. I could tell. My mom kept sending photos in the group chat, centerpiece samples, lighting tests, some fancy-looking charcuterie board she was putting together just like Pinterest. Not a single word about the guest list. Not even a little white lie like, "We'll miss you there." Just silence. I didn't know if they were pretending not to notice, or if they genuinely thought it made sense that I wasn't going to the $10,000 party I paid for. I started keeping my responses short. Thumbs up emoji. Looks great. Nice. It's funny how fast a family chat can go cold when you stop playing your part. But things really broke open about 4 days before the party. Charlotte posted a TikTok. Now, she's not famous or anything, but she is the kind of person who treats her 6,000 followers like she's accepting a Grammy. This particular video was her doing one of those lip-sync trends to some pop song, showing off the venue space while workers were setting things up behind her. She twirled, laughed, then added captions like, "Hard work pays off," and "When you finally book your dream rooftop without daddy's money." And that's when something in me snapped. Because I knew that caption wasn't random. It was pointed. It was a dig. Our dad didn't help her pay for this. I did. She knew that. We all did. And suddenly, I was invisible again, scrubbed out of the story because it didn't match her aesthetic. That night, I got a call from my cousin Layla. She's one of the few people in the family I still trust completely. Early 30s, brutally honest, and allergic to fake people. We hadn't talked in a while, so I was surprised to see her name flash on my phone. "Hey," she said, almost cautiously. "Are you going to Charlotte's thing?" I sighed. Apparently, I don't fit the vibe. She was quiet for a second. Then, "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." Layla cursed under her breath. "Grayson, you paid for that venue." "I know." "No. Like, you literally paid for it. The whole thing." "Yup." There was a pause. Then she asked the question I'd been avoiding. "So what are you going to do?" And that was when I told her the truth. I didn't know yet. It wasn't until the next morning that the idea hit me. I was drinking my second cup of coffee, scrolling through my emails, and one message caught my eye. It was from the event space. A generic confirmation email sent to me months ago, reminding me of the original booking, complete with my name as the primary contact, my email listed for all correspondence, and a little button at the bottom that read, "Need to make changes to your reservation?" My heart rate kicked up. I clicked it. And there it was, my dashboard. My name. my control. And suddenly, all those months of being quiet and agreeable and reliable boiled up into something sharper. I wasn't trying to ruin anything. Not yet. But I wanted to remind Charlotte, remind all of them, who had made that night possible. So I called the venue. Not to cancel. Not yet. Just to make a few inquiries. I introduced myself, confirmed I was the one who paid the deposit, and asked if there were any final invoices or changes pending. The manager, this incredibly professional woman named Tamara, was helpful and polite. She told me everything was on track. Then, almost as an afterthought, she said, "By the way, we've been trying to get final approval on the lighting setup and open bar package. Your sister said she wasn't authorized to sign off. Is that still the case?" I almost laughed. "Yeah," I said. "That's correct. She's not the one who booked it. I didn't make any changes that day, but I left a little note on the dashboard. Please direct all final communication to Grayson, last name, only. No other person is authorized to modify or approve changes." 2 hours later, Charlotte called me. Not texted. Not FaceTimed. She called. "Hey," she said, stretching the word out like a thin smile. "Quick question. Tamara from the venue just called me. Something about final approvals." I kept my voice calm. "Yeah, I let them know I'm the primary contact. Since I paid for it and all." There was a pause. A weird, twitchy silence. "Oh, right. Yeah, of course. I just didn't realize they'd, need your input for the final stuff. You didn't realize the person who funded the entire thing might need to sign off." Another pause. Then, with the fakest laugh I've ever heard. "Well, I just didn't want to bother you. You're always busy." I didn't say anything. "Anyway," she went on, "I was wondering if we could just switch the open bar to full top shelf and add an extra hour to the rooftop access. The photographer says golden hour's gonna hit right in that window." I took a breath. "Sure. Just Venmo me the difference. Looks like it'll be about $1,800 extra." Dead silence. I thought maybe you'd just. "Nope," I said, cutting her off. "You said I didn't fit the vibe, remember?" She tried to walk it back. "Grayson, come on. I was just trying to make sure you wouldn't feel out of place. You don't even like these kinds of events." "That's funny," I said, "because apparently I like them enough to fund them." She got quiet, then huffed. "So what? You're gonna make this about you now?" I let out the softest chuckle. "No, Charlotte. I'm just making sure I'm not invisible in the story you're telling." We didn't talk again after that. Until the day of the party. That call from the venue? It came 1 hour before guests were supposed to arrive. And whatever Tamara said to her, whatever I had set in motion with that one final request, changed everything. But before we get there, you need to know what happened in the 48 hours leading up to it. Because that's when my parents got involved. That's when things got ugly. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about a party. It was about years of pretending everything was fine when it never really was. I'll be honest, after that phone call with Charlotte, I half expected the party to be called off. Or for her to rage post about toxic energy and jealous relatives the way she used to after fights with old roommates. But nothing happened. At least not immediately. Instead, I got silence. Radio silence from Charlotte. No follow-up texts. No apology. No attempt at a peace offering. Just nothing. And that silence echoed across the rest of the family too. The group chat quieted down. No more centerpiece pics or excited countdowns. My mom stopped sending emojis. My dad, who rarely says much anyway, was even more absent. The energy shifted, and I could feel it, like I'd done something wrong just by asking for basic respect. But the weirdest part? Even though I was the one who had been disrespected, I started questioning myself. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should have just gone along with it, kept my mouth shut, and let her have her moment. Maybe, just maybe, this was my fault. That's what years of being the reliable one does to you. You start carrying everyone else's emotional weight and calling it balance. You clean up messes, smooth over drama, write the checks. And when someone cuts you out, you convince yourself they had a reason. But that guilt didn't last long. Because 2 days before the party, my mom called. Not to check in on me. Not to ask how I was feeling. She called because Charlotte was stressed. And apparently I was the reason. "Grayson," she started, in that overly calm, therapist-y voice she always used when she was about to manipulate me. "I think there's been a big misunderstanding. Charlotte's really overwhelmed, and she said you're trying to make things difficult for her." I blinked. She told me I wasn't invited. That's not what she meant. She literally said I didn't fit the vibe. She meant you'd be uncomfortable. You know how her friends are. She didn't want you to feel left out. She made me feel left out by excluding me from a party I paid for. A pause. Then, you know how much this means to her, Grayson. She's been through a lot this year. There it was again. The Charlotte defense shield. She's been through a lot. She's emotional. She's artistic. She's just expressing herself. She can go through a lot, I said evenly. But not on my dime. Mom's voice got tighter. What do you want from her? Do you want her to grovel? Say thank you. You're her brother. I want basic respect. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, in a colder tone, you've always been so rigid. You can't just let people have things. You have to control every situation. That one stung more than I expected. Because it wasn't true. If I wanted control, I would have canceled the whole thing. I would have shut it down weeks ago. But I didn't. I let her have her party. I just didn't let her erase me from it. Still, the words stuck in my chest like thorns. You know what, Mom? I said, trying to stay calm. Let's just stop pretending. I know how you see me. I've known for a while. She didn't respond. So I ended the call. And that night, I hit a low I didn't expect. It wasn't about the money. I've worked hard. I'm okay. It wasn't even about the party. It was the realization that I didn't really have a place in my own family. Not one that wasn't transactional. I was the helper, the fixer, the emergency contact when things fell apart. But when it came time to celebrate, I wasn't someone they wanted around. I was useful, not loved. I spent the next day on autopilot. Didn't answer texts. Didn't check socials. Just worked, walked, sat, thought. And late that night, I found myself standing in my tiny kitchen, staring at the same old cabinets I'd meant to repaint for 3 years, wondering why I'd kept putting myself last. And I cracked. Not loud. Not dramatic. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. I just cracked. I made a list. It sounds ridiculous, I know. But that list saved me. It was a stupid, simple Google Doc titled Things That Are Mine. And on it, I started writing everything I'd accomplished without my family. The clients I'd landed on my own. The apartment I'd saved for. The nights I stayed up rebuilding entire systems while Charlotte posted Ugh Monday vibes selfies in bed. The times I held my own hand when no one else offered theirs. I wrote down every small win. Every choice I'd made for me. And then I made a second list. Things I owe no one for. And the first line? My kindness. That was the moment something shifted. I didn't suddenly become invincible. But I stopped feeling like the victim. I realized that I'd been operating from this place of trying to earn my family's love by being useful. But that kind of love has an expiration date. The second you stop being useful, the love runs dry. So I made a decision. From that day on, I would stop giving to people who didn't respect me. And I meant it. But that didn't mean I'd start cutting people off left and right. No, I was done being the emotional janitor. I was going to rebuild me. The next morning, I woke up early. Took a long walk. Bought fresh groceries. Cooked a real breakfast instead of eating cold leftovers at my desk. I reorganized my schedule. Canceled a few client calls that weren't aligned with what I wanted. I even reached out to a contact in Seattle who had been asking me for months to consult on a startup project, something I'd been putting off because I didn't want to be too distant from family. That project turned out to be one of the most fulfilling things I've done this year. Within a week, I was sleeping better. Within a month, I'd picked up a new routine, gym, meditation, even journaling, which I used to roll my eyes at. But through it all, there was this quiet thread of anger that I hadn't quite let go of. Not because I was plotting revenge, but because I knew something big was coming. The party was now just one day away, and I'd left one small note on the venue dashboard, just a tiny change. Something I didn't think Charlotte even knew about. I hadn't canceled anything, hadn't sabotaged her event, but I'd rerouted all final notifications, delivery instructions, and billing concerns back to me. And that meant when the rental company called, when they realized the final balance on the upgraded decor package hadn't been cleared yet, they called me, not her. And I told them the truth. I hadn't authorized it. They asked if I wanted to cancel that portion of the setup. I paused, then said, not yet, but hold tight. She might call you soon. And that brings us back to the phone call. 1 hour before the party. The moment when the whole thing cracked wide open. But before that final domino fell, something else happened. Something none of them saw coming. Something I didn't even expect to do. And it started with a single text to the one person I didn't think would respond. I didn't expect Layla to reply so fast. I'd texted her on a whim that morning, still half in pajamas, sipping burnt coffee and going through my calendar. I just wrote, "Hey, I think I'm going to make a move tonight. You in?" A minute later, define move. Then I called her, and 5 minutes after I explained what had gone down, she let out this long, slow whistle and said, "Grayson, I've waited years for you to finally grow a spine with them. I'm beyond in. What do you need me to do?" That was the first time I laughed in days. You have to understand, Layla has always been the black sheep of the family in the best way. She doesn't do fake. She moved out of state at 18, refused to let our grandparents pressure her into law school, and started a tiny custom gift box business out of her garage that blew up on Etsy during the pandemic. She's the only person in our family who's told Charlotte no and lived to tell the tale. And she's been watching the same dynamic I have for years. Charlotte doing whatever she wants, our mom covering for her, and me picking up the slack. This party, I told her, is just the tip of it. It's like symbolic. I paid for the fantasy, and she tried to erase me from the story. It's not even about being at the party anymore. It's about reminding her that she doesn't get to do that. Layla said, "You're preaching to the choir, Grayson. So tell me, do you want chaos or do you want class?" "Both," I said. She laughed. "Perfect. Let's give her a memory she'll never forget." And so we got to work. Step 1, find the cracks. I spent the next few hours combing through everything I still had access to: the venue dashboard, the catering contracts, the floral delivery times. Charlotte had gone behind my back and upgraded nearly everything: gold-rimmed champagne glasses, floral installations on every table, and even a 5-piece jazz band for cocktail hour. Total cost of all those changes? An extra $3,200, none of which she'd cleared with me. Tamara at the venue had flagged this in her last update, but I told her to hold off on charging my card. I didn't cancel anything. Not yet. I just wanted Charlotte to feel the heat. I also discovered something else interesting. The final balance for the band hadn't been paid yet. Only the deposit had. And per the contract, if payment wasn't made by noon on the day of the event, the band had the right to pull out without a refund. Guess who was still listed as the point of contact? Step 2, control the narrative. Layla helped me here. She still had access to Charlotte's close friends story list on Instagram, even though Charlotte had clearly removed me from it. Apparently, Charlotte had been posting all week about how this was her dream night, how she'd worked so hard to pull it together, how it was all manifestation and alignment. Classic Charlotte. So Layla made a few calls to a couple of our cousins and a couple of Charlotte's friends who had quietly fallen out with her over the years. She has a tendency to use people like props in her life and then ghost them. Turns out, most of them didn't even know I had paid for the party. "Oh, she told everyone it was her savings," Layla said after one call. That she'd been hustling and finally made it happen on her own. I felt my jaw clench. So she didn't just leave me out. She rewrote the whole story. "Yup." Layla paused. "You sure you're okay with what we're about to do?" "I've never been more sure." Step 3, pick the perfect time. I didn't want to crash the party. That's not my style. I didn't want a dramatic confrontation in front of guests or a drink thrown in anyone's face. I didn't want to become that story. I wanted her to feel it quietly, behind the scenes, like a string being pulled from the seams until the whole image started to come apart. So I made a few strategic calls that morning. I called Tamara and told her, politely, to hold the floral upgrade and champagne delivery until she heard back from me directly. I explained there had been a payment issue and I didn't want any surprise charges on my card. She agreed. I then called the band's manager and asked if they had received final payment yet. They hadn't. I reminded them, again politely, that I was still the listed contact and that unless that payment was settled by noon, I'd assumed the performance was canceled. He was professional and respectful, said he understood, said he'd follow the terms. Finally, I called the catering company. They were already set, but I let them know that all communication about dietary preferences or guest count changes should be verified with me. And then I waited. It took until 2 p.m. for Charlotte to realize what was happening. First came the frantic text. "Why are vendors calling you? What did you say to them?" Then the call. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Then a string of angry messages. "You're seriously ruining everything. Why are you doing this to me? You said you weren't going to make it about you, and now you're punishing me?" It was incredible, honestly, how quickly her tone shifted from smug to self-pitying. That afternoon, While she scrambled to fix what she could, read, beg my mom to cover costs I'd frozen, I sent one more text. To my dad. We hadn't talked much lately. He's not really involved emotionally, kind of the stoic type. But growing up, he was the only one who ever pulled Charlotte aside and told her to cut the theatrics. Which meant something. So I wrote, just so you know, Dad, I paid for her party. She excluded me, lied about who funded it, and now she's mad that the truth is catching up. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm just done pretending this is normal. He didn't reply, but later, Layla told me he called her. Is it true, he'd asked. All of it, she said. And then, apparently, he sighed and said, I should have seen this coming. Step 4. Be there, just not where she expects. I didn't show up at the venue. I didn't call. I didn't text. But I was in the city that night. Layla and I grabbed dinner across the street from the rooftop, at a quiet Italian place with a perfect view of the building. We sat by the window, sipping wine, watching the chaos unfold from a distance. Around 7:15 p.m., 15 minutes after the party was supposed to start, 2 florists arrived with half the original order. Layla nudged me and grinned. She probably thinks they just messed up. Then at 7:30, a guy in a suit stepped out onto the rooftop, looked around, and made a call. That's the band leader, I said. 5 minutes later, they were gone. Gone. Charlotte had tried to cover the remaining fee herself, but her card didn't go through. The bank flagged it for suspicious activity because she hadn't warned them about a large payment, and she didn't have a backup. Then, at 8 p.m., Tamara stepped outside, looking tense, phone to her ear. A few guests started showing up. Confused faces. No music. No fancy champagne. And Charlotte? Charlotte came rushing out about 10 minutes later, in a bright gold dress, holding her phone like it was a ticking bomb. From across the street, we watched her throw her hands in the air and argue with Tamara. Layla leaned in. This is better than Netflix. I couldn't help but agree. But that wasn't the real payoff. The real moment came when the waiter brought us the check, and inside it was a little envelope Layla had printed earlier that day. She'd written Charlotte a letter, and had it delivered by courier, right to the venue. I didn't know exactly what it said, but Layla smirked when I asked. Nothing cruel, she said. Just a reminder that the story she tells about being self-made isn't real, and that you're done playing background character in a life you built for her. I sat back, watching the city lights shimmer on the rooftop across the street. I didn't need to see her read it. I didn't need to watch the tears, or the outrage, or the denial. All I needed was that silence afterward. Because sometimes the quietest moments are the loudest. But that wasn't the end. Because when the party finally limped into motion, someone else showed up. Someone I hadn't spoken to in a long, long time. And he had a story to tell, too. Charlotte didn't see him arrive. Not at first. She was too busy pacing the rooftop in those ridiculously tall gold heels, clutching her phone in one hand and a champagne flute in the other. Filled, I assume, with the cheapest sparkling wine she could find after the venue told her the premium bottle she'd ordered had been pulled last minute due to billing complications. The jazz band she'd hyped up for weeks was nowhere in sight. The table centerpieces were smaller than expected, and a few guests, those who weren't already awkwardly checking their watches, were whispering that something felt off. From across the street, I watched it all unfold from a dim corner booth of the restaurant with Layla, who'd ordered dessert out of pure pettiness. She's trying so hard to look like she's in control, she murmured, poking at a tiramisu with unnecessary precision. But her eyes twitching. Classic Charlotte panic mode. I didn't say anything, because that's when he showed up. My dad. He wasn't dressed up. Just a navy button-down and slacks. The kind of outfit that said, I'm not staying long. He walked in alone. No mom. No smile. Charlotte didn't notice until she heard someone call his name. And when she turned and saw him, the entire tension in her body shifted. She lit up like a sparkler, rushing over, arms out, trying to save the night. Dad, you made it. I didn't think. I'm not here for the party, he said, loud enough that 2 people at the appetizer table turned. I couldn't hear every word, but Layla could read lips. Oh, she whispered. He's about to drop a nuke. Charlotte faltered. She tried to say something, probably some version of, but it's my night. But he cut her off. My dad reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Plain. White. No glitter. No gold foil. Just regular paper. He handed it to her, said something short, 3 or 4 words, and then turned around and left. She didn't open it right away. She just stood there, staring at the envelope like it had teeth. Layla leaned toward the window. I bet he told her. Told her what? I asked, though I already knew. That he's done. Because, as I learned later, the letter wasn't from me. It was from him. Apparently, after I texted him 2 days earlier, he'd done something I never thought he would. He went back through old financial records, photos, and emails. Looked through years of moments where I stepped up, where Charlotte crossed the line, where my mom covered for her. And he finally saw the pattern. He told Layla that watching Charlotte melt down over the party, over vendors pulling out and champagne disappearing, was the moment he realized she'd become exactly what our family had let her be all along. Someone who believed love meant obedience, and that money from others was just owed to her. That night, his envelope didn't contain threats. It didn't contain an apology on my behalf. It contained something better. A single check for $10,000, made out to me, with a sticky note attached that just said, "You were right to walk away, Dad." I didn't find that out until 2 days later when I checked my mailbox and saw the letter he'd mailed me separately, typed, signed, old-fashioned. He wrote, "Grayson, I should have spoken up years ago. I've been complicit in the way your mother let Charlotte rule the house, and I let it slide because it was easier than facing the fallout. That stops now. I've told your mother I won't enable this anymore. The money is a gesture. It won't make up for the years, but it's yours. No strings. You're not invisible, son. I see you now. I hope it's not too late." It was the first time in my adult life that I cried because I felt seen. Not hurt. Not disappointed. Just seen. As for Charlotte, the fallout came fast and loud. The day after the party, I woke up to a dozen notifications. Instagram stories deleted, posts wiped, comments turned off. Apparently, more than a few people at the party had started putting the pieces together. Layla had helped spread the truth, not maliciously, but clearly. One of Charlotte's old friends, who happened to be there and not in the inner circle anymore, posted a blurry photo of the rooftop with the caption, "Wild how you can throw a $10,000 party and forget to invite the person who paid for it. Manifestation energy, right?" That post got shared, then screenshotted, then discussed in a private Facebook group where most of Charlotte's old high school circles still followed each other. By that afternoon, she was damage controlling like crazy. She called me twice, texted 5 times. Everything from "Can we please talk?" to "I didn't mean to hurt you," to "You could have just told me you were upset instead of ruining my night." But I didn't respond. Because here's the thing about revenge. It doesn't always have to be loud. It doesn't have to be about screaming or public takedowns or exposing someone in front of a crowd. Sometimes, the most devastating revenge is showing someone exactly what life looks like when you remove yourself. The person who held them up, covered for their flaws, and gave without asking for credit. I didn't burn a bridge. I just walked off it. And when Charlotte looked back, she realized she was standing on that bridge alone. A week later, I got a call from Tamara at the venue. She told me, somewhat awkwardly, that Charlotte had tried to rebook the space for a smaller, rebranded birthday dinner, but her payment didn't go through. She asked if I wanted to approve it again under my name. I politely declined. Then she said, "By the way, that was a wild night. I've worked in events for years, and I've never seen someone so ungrateful to the person who made the whole thing possible." I laughed softly. "You're not the only one." As for me, I took that $10,000 check and donated part of it to a local mentorship program for kids going into tech. The rest I used to upgrade my work setup, new monitors, ergonomic chair, and a few pieces of art for my blank apartment walls. Stuff that made my space feel like mine again. And Layla? She framed the courier letter she sent Charlotte and put it on the wall of her home office. I asked why. She said, "Because it reminds me not to forget who I am, and that sometimes the best stories are the ones where the quiet guy wins." I don't know what Charlotte's telling people now. Maybe she's spinning a new story. Maybe I'm still the villain in her version of events. Maybe Mom's still covering, pretending everything's fine. But I've stopped caring. Because the truth isn't a version. It's what actually happened. And in the end, I didn't need revenge. I just needed them to know I wasn't the background character in a party I paid for. I was the one holding the lights, the roof, the stage, and the moment I stepped away, it all came crashing down. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away quietly, so they can hear the silence you leave behind.